I've been asked to speak about my book, The Discernment of Spirits, an Ignatian Guide for Everyday Living. And I love speaking about Ignatian Discernment of Spirits, his teaching on discernment of spirits. I've been doing that probably for about 25 years now, traveling around the country and some other places. And I love the light, the freshness, the hope, the renewed energy that Ignatius' teaching on discernment of spirits gives to everyone, and in a special way to people who love the Lord, who are faithful followers of Christ, who really want to be close to the Lord and do and live the way the Lord teaches us, who take seriously the vocation to holiness that is given to every one of us. Now, on that spiritual journey, as we walk it day by day, all of us are experiencing times when God feels close to us, when prayer comes alive. If we're at Mass, for example, we feel the presence of the Lord. We hear Him in His Word, in His real presence in the Eucharistic species before us. When the Gospels are alive, when we have energy to take new steps in living our vocation, in love of a spouse if we're called to marriage, in love of children, our children. And then there are other times, if we're honest about it, when we know that the bottom seems to drop out of that energy. And we're not sure why. It can be confusing and troubling. This day, for example, I don't really feel the desire to pray in the way that I usually do. Or if I do try to pray, the prayer seems dry and empty. It's hard to feel God's closeness. The energy that I felt, maybe even the day before or the week before, to take new steps in reaching out in love to live my vocation as a spouse or as a mother or a father or as a layman involved in the world, or my own as a priest and religious, that kind of energy somehow seems to be gone. It's troubling, it's difficult for us, we don't really know what to do with it, and we can easily at such times regress. The prayer begins to slip. It's harder to get to the faith formation meeting on Wednesday evening in the parish that I've been going to for the last several months and have loved. My attendance at daily Mass, if I've been doing that, can tend to waver. And then comes St. Ignatius of Loyola with a marvelous teaching on exactly this kind of daily spiritual experience that we all go through. There's no shame in it. Every Christian who loves the Lord, every saint who has loved the Lord, has also experienced these times of God's closeness, which Ignatius calls spiritual consolation, and these times of discouragement and struggle, which Ignatius calls spiritual desolation. Ignatius, out of his own experience, crafted 14 rules, as he calls them, guidelines, practical principles, in which he helps us to understand this kind of experience, to be able to notice it when it's happening, and to understand its spiritual significance, to name it. This is spiritual consolation. God is working here. It's time to be open to what God is doing and receive it and be guided by it. This is spiritual desolation. It's 10 o'clock. I'm alone in my room in the evening after a hard day. Usually I pray, take up the scriptures, make an examination of conscience. But tonight there's no energy for it. Everything in me wants to reach out for the tablet or the smartphone or the remote control. And I know with the help of Ignatius that I'm experiencing spiritual desolation. And then finally, that with the help of Ignatius, I have the tools that I need. Not only not to be harmed by these times of spiritual desolation, but actually to grow through them as God intends in permitting these times in our lives. That's Ignatius' teaching on discernment of spirits. Biblically, I think of it in the light of the words that Jesus says in Luke chapter 4 when he returns to Nazareth in the synagogue and says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim liberty to captives and let the oppressed go free." This teaching on discernment of spirits is about setting captives free, setting people who love the Lord, want to do His will with the deepest part of their heart, and struggle with times of spiritual desolation, helping them understand those times and pointing out what they need to do so that the captives are set free to love and follow the Lord, to walk on the spiritual journey in response to the love that is the center of our lives. Setting captives free. That's what this teaching will do. It has blessed 500 years of Catholics since Ignatius wrote this in the 16th century, and it continues to be an enormous blessing in the church today. My prayer would be that that teaching can help every one of us to be set free to love the Lord.